much as I try to control everybody, the characters still find ways to say, no, we don't want to have that conversation in this scene. This isn't the right time to talk about, that or whatever. So I go, okay, we will table that. We will save it for later, but it's going in. it's going in somewhere.
You're gonna find a spot for it.
I'm going to find a spot. Eventually, I will get you to talk about this. So it's an ongoing battle between me and my characters. And I guess where the horror, if there is horror elements, I like to, I don't know, it's funny, for the grim subject matter that I often have, I have a lot of sort of a sense of humor about things. So when I read other stuff and watch other movies and things like that, one of the things that inspires me when I read is, what haven't I seen before? Like, well, damn, it's like, okay, the vampire's always got this reincarnated lover. Well, what if one time he finds his reincarnated true love and she reincarnated as a fat, bald guy? Why doesn't that ever happen? I want to see that story. And if nobody else is writing it, I will say, okay, I'm gonna.
Fat bald guy?
No, that's coming. It's coming.
Excellent.
It's an idea looking for a story. I'm looking for a book to put that in, because normally I don't do the reincarnation love story thing because I'm just sick of it. But little things like just the daily habits, vampires brushing their teeth, worrying about gum disease, things like that is what I try to. That's where I separate, and to me, horror is usually ordinary people dealing with extraordinary or terrible events. Me, I tend to go extraordinary people dealing with terribly mundane, annoying events. I mean, I have other stuff too. It's not like the whole book is just a Seinfeld episode, but but to me, the fun part, like, I mean, there's all the cool action scenes and stuff with the James Bond plots and whatnot. But to me, the fun stuff is describing my gangster vampire coming home, and the thing of him getting a pot, a teapot of blood, and pouring himself, a glass of blood, and deciding that, he's become fond of late of adding creamer to the blood, a little bit of cream, because it just kind of like goes nicely at the end of the day, and just it's the little things like that. I love that. I find that stuff really, that's what kind of keeps me going, and as typical, it has no relation to the topic that I post.
I got something.
But that's how I write.
When you were telling your story about suddenly there is this book of spells. Okay, so here's how my brain works, and here's why I write, or not why, but here's how I write horror stories rather than something else. In this book, I have a short story called Interstate Baby. This idea came about because 7 or 8 years ago, I was driving in the middle of the night all the way back from Florida. My parents live there, I was visiting. My wife is asleep, and it's like 1 a.m, and I'm tired, but I've got 2 hours to go, and I'm not pulling over at some stupid hotel. I'm gonna make it, And a raccoon starts to waddle across the road in front of me. And I almost hit it. I didn't. I swerved out of the way. Everything was fine. But in a split second before I realized, watch out, that's a raccoon, the lighting was just a little bit weird, and I thought, my God, is that a baby? Because it had this weird white patch on its butt, and I thought there was a diaper or something, and I'm like, whoa. So I spent the rest of the drive thinking to myself, why would a baby be waddling across the road in the middle of the night? I had no answer for that, but I started writing a story a week later, and it was a guy driving his car from Florida to New Jersey. I mean, it was me. And it was a baby. In fact, he thought it was a raccoon at first.
Nice twist.
Yes, thank you. So what happened in the story, it was totally realistic fiction. There was nothing supernatural about this whatsoever. And it started out with him seeing the baby, and he pulls over and he screeches, and wife wakes up, what's going on? He's like, no, wait, it's okay, honey. He gets out of the car because he's like, I gotta go help this baby out. And now I'm pantsing this. I have no idea where I'm going with this story. And I've written like, 5 or 6 pages, and I realize I have no dialogue. My character, his wife's asleep, he mumbled something. He needs another character. So I brought in Evan the motorcycle guy. Why? I don't know, because Evan's the different from Bob, who was me being bored. So now I've got Evan the motorcycle guy, and Evan almost hits the baby, and the two of them are talking, they're looking in the weeds for the baby. They finally come across the baby, and I'm like, I don't have a fucking story. And all of a sudden, the baby became a vampire. Why?
Vampire.
Because that's interesting. Because I wanted to know what was interesting. And I had to do a great deal of revision to make it work, obviously. But as the story progressed, it ended up, in this particular story, the story wasn't about the baby or about my character Bob driving the car or motorcycle Evan who gets tragically destroyed by the baby. It's a wonderful scene.
Awesome.
It's actually a story about the baby's mother who is experimenting with who she can turn into vampires. And that was the story in a nutshell. I had no intention whatsoever of writing that particular storyline. It really was just what happens if you're driving down the road and you almost hit a baby. But my brain, I think, went to that answer because that's what made it an interesting story to me. Because if I just stuck with the realistic fiction, it was just some baby, I was on the verge of boring myself to tears. As soon as I clicked in, I was like, whoa, now this is fun. And that a lot of my stories go in that kind of fashion unless I plot them ahead of time. That's it, that's all I got.
So I think I'm going to turn us over to audience questions now, because I think they'll give us a little more interesting fodder than the like standard questions that I would have for us.
I'm ready already.